Welcome to Behind the Audition podcast with your host, Curt Hilton. Listen in on interviews with voiceovers, filmmakers, producers, animators, and much more. Curt, a voice actor himself, will give insider tips to the business, talk with guests about how they got into the business, and be sure to stay tuned to the end of the podcast when he challenges his guests with a pop-up audition. Now it's time for Behind the Audition podcast. Here's Curt Hilton.
Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Audition podcast. On this episode, I got to speak to the amazing voice actor, Dan Wright. Dan and I talked about how he started in the voiceover industry, the good and bad times to get where he is, landing a huge gig on ESPN and for Ace Hardware. We talked about going back to the big studios for recording and where the voiceover industry is today. So sit back and enjoy another episode of Behind the Audition podcast. And coming to the show, I'm super excited to have this guy on, the one, the only. You've seen him on, you've actually heard him, not seen him, heard his voice on Hulu, HBO, ABC, NHL, as well as ESPN. Dan Wright, welcome to Behind the Audition podcast. How you doing?
Hey, what's up, Curt? How are you, man?
I am super excited to have you on the show. It's been a while since I've been wanting to book this, and I'm glad you're on here, and you're a busy guy. So what's going on today in the voiceover world for you?
Nothing much, man. Just keeping the steady clients happy and always auditioning. Big part of the job, right?
Exactly. Always doing something. So let's go back to the beginning. What got you into the industry of wanting to be a voiceover?
Back in 2008, I was looking into perhaps changing careers to radio, and I went to Connecticut School of Broadcasting to study that, and actually crossed paths with some people that were involved with voiceover. Mm-hmm. And kind of from there, I realized that was more my calling than looking for shift work here and there at radio stations.
Absolutely. And so your first audition, what was that like?
Well, it's tough because I didn't have any experience, and so there's a lot of nervousness that comes into play, and when you first become a voice actor, you don't understand the relationship between your heart and your head and your mouth and how one responds to the other. You don't really know how to navigate your instrument yet, so yeah, the first auditions are pretty rough, man.
When I first got into this back at the radio station, did you get that nervousness, like hearing your voice back and how people are going to think it sounded? Did you go through that phase being a voice actor?
Yeah, absolutely. It's jarring to hear your voice, recorded and played back to you, because it's vastly different than what you hear in your head when you're speaking. So that's tough. And I struggled with a really bad regionalism too. I'm originally from Queens, New York. So a lot of dropped R's, a lot of extra W's. I saw, that kind of thing. So I had to overcome that as well.
Well, you got that really cool gravelly voice, which you have that on your Instagram. You have that really cool. Like, when did somebody come up to you, like when you were doing these voiceovers, when they say, this is where you need to be? When did that happen?
Well, I mean, early on when I started taking classes and meeting with agents and stuff, I was super green. Nobody was ready to sign me yet, but they said that my voice quality lent itself to promo.
Yeah.
And at the time, trailer was a lot bigger than it is now, Yeah. That was intriguing to me. But again, the way voiceover works, it's kind of commercial first, and promo is a niche, genre, and then trailer is even fewer people are getting that work,
Yeah, I see the trailer nowadays. It's more like visuals and sound effects and clips of the movie. We do Absolutely. we do have the occasional one, and I do hear you doing promo, which you do a great job. We have, so many people out there with that voice. Do you think we're going to go back to that though, where like the promo narrator describes the whole movie, or do you think we're going to stay in this whole sound effects, visuals? What do you think?
As a voiceover, you would want them to go back to the old school, and hell and praise to Don LaFontaine, Hal Douglas, the whole old guard. I love those guys, and a big reason why I got into voiceover were gentlemen like that. But That being said, as a moviegoer, as someone who watches trailers, I actually enjoy a trailer that doesn't have voiceover more. And I feel it's an editor's game. I think a well-edited trailer without VO is actually more compelling, you know?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. It is nice though to hear at the end of like the movie, rated R or
Oh,
PG,
sure. Little tag.
or at least have tag the actors' names. You don't have to really tell the story like, a man walking down the street, he tripped over a rock, he threw the mail, stuff like that. But I think it's still important to say the actors' names, what the rating and fun stuff, because there was nothing like going to the movies back in the day, which a lot of people, they're slowly getting back to it. Nothing like sitting down, and the trailer was like the most exciting part because what's coming out. And I was always curious, now I watch Netflix and the new movies, they don't really have that anymore. And I'm kind of hoping it does go back to more voiceover than sound effects, because, it just made the movie more exciting, like to want to go see. Don't you agree a little bit?
I think some movies, I think some movies it can work for it, there's an aspect of it now that seems very parody-ish, one man, one mission, that kind of thing.
That was a good Hal Douglas right there.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it. I think it can go both ways. I think in given circumstances, voiceover works, but I've seen some breathtaking trailers that have absolutely no voice on it, huge sweeping landscapes, beautiful orchestral music, occasional sound on tape, somebody from the film perhaps speaking a part, I think there's a case to be argued on either side of that.
Absolutely. And I see you on Instagram and you give some wonderful feedback, VO tips to those wanting to get into the industry and everything. I'm always curious, where do you think this industry is going with, we're slowly getting back out there with the pandemic, and do you think there'll be as many voiceovers wanting to get into the game now, or do you think that was just like a little hobby to them and they're going to slowly progressively get out of it again?
Well, it's tough, because a lot of people, I think, have the misconception, and I did when I first started, that you can just kind of stroll into this, grab a microphone, plug it into your computer, and you'll be making $1 million in 3 months. And that's just not the case. This is a long game. You gotta hang in there, and you have to get experience. You have to earn your stripes. Nobody's going to give it to you. And you have to love it, because you're going to have to continue to work your day job while you do this in the beginning. And, there's no shame in that. There's no shame in making a living, providing for your family, no matter how you do that. If it's at a microphone, if it's at a steering wheel, it doesn't matter. Right now, I am fortunate enough that, I am able to provide for my family solely with voiceover, but I still have my CDL license. If things dried up and I had to, I would get behind the wheel of a truck tomorrow,
Wow, that's awesome.
And that doesn't speak to how talented I am or my ability as a voice actor. It's about putting food on the table, all that being said, you have to love this. You have to appreciate the acting in it. You have to enjoy auditioning, not just for winning the job, but for the opportunity to act. And this is acting, make no mistake. Love it. Love what you do. Be authentic. Allow yourself to be great. A lot of this job is also getting out of your own way. Don't worry so much about how you sound. Worry more about connecting with the words that you're reading, because you're not reading, you're speaking feelings and thoughts. Trying to compel someone to do something, I think I got away from your original question.
No, actually, you hit it right on the head with, and I think that's good. And I want to know a little bit about, I didn't know you're out there on the road driving trucks. That is awesome. You would be like the really cool guy on the CB, talking back to that voice, we got a cop coming behind us, you know what I mean?
That's a 10-4 Big Daddy. I seen the 5-0.
Yeah. And I just want to say thank you. And I appreciate you doing that, because there is a lot out there. I think hopefully that we will get you guys back on the road. And it's always nice knowing what people do outside of voice acting. You know, a lot of people don't realize I do DJ stuff on the side too, as well. And hearing what you do, that would be really cool to, like I said, hear your voice on the CB out there in the world. So let's talk about, you getting into the world, getting a coach. What was that process like, finding a good coach to trust and to help build your brand?
Well, I think it's important to not just go to one coach. Early on, I went to a few places that I wouldn't say are questionable, but they're kind of have a set curriculum that you go through. And it's not necessarily bad, especially if you're first starting, because you don't have to be challenged that much and as far as your ability to perform a script. So if you go through one of these curriculum-like situations where you're just kind of learning to hit certain words to convey certain emotions and feelings, that's fine. I think it's important to diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Go to a lot of different classes with different people. That's important. Again, to address your question more directly, I think it's important to work with people that are working in the industry and have worked recently in the industry. A lot of the classes I go to now, if I go to a class for in-show narration, I go to a class with someone who's on air right now, in-show narrating. If I go to a promo class, I'm going to want to go to someone who is currently the voice of a campaign of a promo.
Right.
You want to learn from someone who's getting it done practically in real life,
Right. I love that. Yeah, that's good advice. And I finding your niche is what you basically did. And I see you on some workshops. I am trying to get myself back into some workshops. I'm going to try to start some here with the podcast. Talk about finding the right workshop. There are a lot of workshops out there, and talk about the warnings for those making some that may not bring value to your business. Okay.
Well, with the pandemic, with all the bad things that came out of the pandemic, one of the good things has been that you no longer have to just be in LA or New York in order to take a workshop, because almost everything is via Zoom now, right?
Right.
So to name drop, if you will, Real Voice LA, I love. Trailer Voice Artists, Brent Allen Hagel. These are reputable places that anyone who runs a Zoom workshop out of those places, it's going to be someone who's working in the industry now.
That's great.
And Abacus in New York is another great resource. And again, I said you have to do some research and make sure that they, at the very least, have worked in the industry. There are some people who refer to themselves as voiceover gurus, VO teachers. They've never been on air. They've never competed nationally, commercially, promo, or otherwise. And it doesn't take a whole lot to research someone. If you want to research somebody's commercial work, you go to ispot.tv, and under their celebrity section, you enter their name, and you'll see how many airings they've had of any commercials that they've ever voiced. So if you have somebody trying to teach you how to break down commercial copy, and they're not on iSpot and they don't have any airings, then they haven't worked nationally. Is that the guy you want to learn from? Really? So yeah, research is definitely the way to go.
That's great. And a lot of people that do get into this industry, they just jump the gun. They just hire the first person that sells them on social media, and then they'll hire them and they realize, wow, that was a waste of money, because it's not cheap to have a coach. It's not cheap to make a demo. It's not cheap to do this industry. I mean, a lot of people think it's just like you said earlier, you pop in a USB and you start talking on a mic, you sell your stuff on freelance sites. But at the end of the day, if you want to do this, I think you should do it. This is what you should do, and do it seriously. There are a lot of people out there doing it for a hobby and doing it for extra money. And I've talked to some voice actors recently. I just don't want that to affect the industry, because this is our art. This is our career, and this is what we focus on. And I just, hopefully those that don't take this seriously decide to go back to what they did better before. Don't you agree?
I understand. Yeah, I do understand what you're saying. And anybody has the right to do what they want to do. And I would never impede that. The guys and gals on Fiverr and stuff like that, how badly it hurts the industry. The clients that are willing to pay that little for a product are not interested in putting forth a serious message. The big clients,
right?
And I have a few. You follow me on Instagram.
Yeah.
They know when they have someone at the mic who has the years of experience, who's worked with overseas clients, who's been directed by 10 people at the same time, who all have different ideas of how they think that it should sound, and you have to keep all of them happy at once. They know when you have a hardened professional, someone who's honed their skills to the point that they've worked in any given situation. Those of us who have been through that are the ones competing nationally. I don't think anything that's happening on a local level through Fiverr or some of the pay-to-play sites, I almost dropped some names there, is affecting what's happening at the highest level right now.
I agree. I mean, very well said. Now, one thing I'm going to talk about is, I said something to you earlier before the show. I have this feeling that I think that we are kind of doing like a full circle. So if you watch, we watched a lot of TV during the pandemic, right? We did a lot of streaming and all that. And I was telling this to my wife, podcasting is taking over streaming. It seems a lot of people are getting into podcasting, and there's a lot of money going into podcasting, and a lot of people are getting away from their TV. They're getting outside and there's shows coming on the podcast. And do you think we're kind of going back to like 1920s? We're turning the TV off, we're turning on the radio. We're kind of like going back, back in the day where we sit by the radio. I wasn't there, but our grandparents told the story, sitting by a radio and listening to cool stories and mystery thrillers and all that.
Sure.
And then we're talking about maybe going back to the theaters and, maybe going to rent movies again. There's some vintage Blockbusters open. Do you think we're kind of going in a full circle of what we used to do before to kind of change the economy again?
That's an interesting idea, and it's exciting to me. It's not scary. Kids nowadays have no idea the joy of getting your family together and going to Blockbuster Video and picking your movies for the Friday or Saturday night with the candy and the popcorn. It was an event. It was cool, Right. And the radio serials with the acting, brought to you by Ovaltine, and the murder mysteries. I think that would be awesome. It would be really great.
Absolutely. And I'm on a roster here in Raleigh at a local studio, and it's a really cool studio. It has like nostalgic microphones in studio. And I just got a call for a possible audition. Do you think we might be heading back into the studios? Now you're mentioning, TVA and other studios, studios by you. Do you think we're going to go back into big studios, bringing back voiceovers so we have that camaraderie in the studio again and kind of feeling like we're, I know it's great to have a home studio.
Right.
It's great. But mentally, do you think it's better to get back in the studio and do some recording as well?
I think for some people it is. For me, it's not. I like working from home a great deal.
Honest question, honest answer.
The studios I'd have to go to are in New York. I'm in New Jersey.
Okay.
And it's a train ride, but I am not a fan of big crowds of people.
Okay.
So I have to make my way into Manhattan. And I used pre-pandemic, I did that for auditions and jobs. And I'm not antisocial by any stretch of the imagination, but I like to have a little bit of elbow room. I like to be able to move a bit.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. But I do understand what you're saying, the social kind of aspect of getting out and connecting with people one-on-one in person, yeah.
Absolutely. And, I was just I DJed an event on Saturday, and it was weird being around a bunch of looks like it was probably, good about 100 people outside. It was an outside event, but it was that, getting back out into the world and feeling that that feeling of being around people. But I want to talk about, your big jobs like Ace Hardware. You're the voice of Ace Hardware. How did that? That was a big one. How did you land that one?
Okay, I auditioned, but I'm going to be more specific than that. I don't want to get too specific, but I'll give you as much of it as I can. It was an audition like any other. I didn't think much of it, and I again, I was lucky enough to not get in my own way because I wasn't thinking too much about it. And I had no idea the potential of the scope of the job, you know. So I did it, and I read it from the heart and from my mind, and was asked to do some demos for them. So demos basically are when they book you to read spots at like $250 per session, no matter how many spots you read, you know.
Right.
And I did that. And I was glad to do it because at the time I was still driving a truck, and I just liked being at a microphone and doing it, you know. And I did all these Thanksgiving and Christmas spots that were all demo. And I got notification right at the beginning of that November, I guess it was 2019, that they were going full up, which means that the demos that we had done together, they decided to go to air with. So there was a lot more money involved. Beyond the $250 they paid me for the demo, which was amazing and beautiful and wonderful and a blessing. And that following March, so that's March of 2020, I was asked by my agent at the time if I would join SAG-AFTRA in order to continue my working relationship with Ace Hardware. Wow. And that's what I did, and I'm working with them to this day, and they changed my life and my family's life.
That is awesome. And I love that place still. I love going into the Ace Hardware. I literally right down the street. I go there more than the big box. Just this, like, everybody's so happy to help. And it has, if I just need like 2 screws, I don't need to buy a box of 700 screws. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And another one, I will talk about the Blackhawks. I'm a St. Louis Blues fan, so that's going to be a little bit hard to talk about. But the Blackhawks, ESPN, how did that one come about? That is awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thank you, man. That was huge. And my first big delve into promo, and that's after 12 years in the industry. It was an audition for ESPN that they said they wanted someone who sounded like a coach. And that's not what the script said to me. The specs don't always say what the script is telling you, you know? And it was that first spot, the anthem, the NHL anthem, that starts like, we're not in hockey for the hype or the fame. It felt more one-on-one personal to me than a coach speaking to a team. And again, I didn't think much of it because I never, ever booked the coach stuff. That is like, you might as well just like put it right in the delete folder for me because it just doesn't happen. And a week after I submitted that, the anthem audition, I was notified by my agent that they wanted to move forward to record the anthem, and that aired, letting everyone know that the NHL was coming back to ESPN and ESPN Plus. And a week after that was the email that they wanted to move forward with me as the promo voice of the NHL on ESPN. And again,
man, did you freak out? You had to freak out a little bit. Yeah.
I cried. Actually, I'm not ashamed to admit that. I cried tears of joy. I was very, very happy.
That is awesome. I had Stefan Johnson on the show before, and literally when I was saying, what's coming up, he couldn't tell me. And a little bit later, I turn on Bally Sports, and there he was. I'm like, oh my God, I can't imagine the feeling you guys go through getting a call like that. I mean, that has to be cool. And congratulations to you. I mean, you do a great job. And
thank you.
Before I get into the fun audition challenge, one question I have is, I just talked to one of my coaches last week, and I said, I'm kind of going through a slump, with auditions. You do your typical auditions. You get some from your agents, you get some from your business,
right?
And I felt like a little bit of everything was repetitive, with my auditions. And he goes, well, let's talk about your auditions. Let's talk about it, how you do them. And he said, you got 3 people in that booth. You got somebody run the production. You got your person who wants the product, and there's another piece I forgot. There's your producer, the buyer, and the agent. Pretend like you're auditioning individually with all 3 of those. And I sat back, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is the best advice Is that something you do too as well? Because I think if you pretend there's 3 different people, because also I had Lonnie Manella tell me, do one yourself, like one that you think is good. Is that something you did with one like ESPN and the Blackhawks, like you're saying? Like, did you just do one you thought it would be good for that audition?
I definitely was speaking to someone and authentically. It is good to, what happens if you're not speaking to someone, you become very preoccupied with how you sound. And if you sound right, am I going up where I'm supposed to go? Am I going down where I'm supposed to go? And when a casting director hears your audition and that you're so preoccupied with how you sound, they're going to move on. They have to select someone who's connected. So I would say it is good advice to be speaking to someone without a doubt. And I don't know if it's necessarily a director that I'm speaking to or a producer or an engineer. Sometimes it's a friend. Sometimes it's someone I feel needs convincing or needs to be informed, because it's good not to sell. It's better to inform someone of something, And I want to touch on something else because we talked about a couple of my victories, right?
Yeah.
There have been horrible defeats in the 12 years leading up to this, Early on in my career, I was given opportunities I was not ready for yet because of the sound of my voice, right?
Sure.
Which can be a blessing and a curse because if you don't know how to use the instrument, well, he sounds great, but then they get you behind the glass. I read for promo producers that I started reading and they all look at each other like, this is not good, and not even like he's in the ballpark, like undirectable because I had just started. I didn't have the tools in my toolbox. I, years ago, booked something that was 15 radio spots for a huge insurance company. Took the train into the city, had worked all night the night before, took the train into the city, did a few takes. They were, this wasn't in person. They were like remote to the studio I went to. And they were like, they put me on hold. They came back. They're like, well, we have some legal issues. We have to work some things out with the script. They went with somebody else. And I know who the somebody else is because they posted on Instagram that they got the job. Not against me, but they were proud of what they were doing, right?
Sure.
So taking the train home with tears in my eyes, knowing I had, dropped the ball on what would have been one of my first major successes. That being said, these defeats that I went through, these downtimes, these hard times, these times that a client didn't like what I was doing, all of this builds your armor and your ability and makes you the juggernaut that you are at the microphone today,
Love that. Yes.
The bad, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. There's a reason it's cliche because it's true,
Right.
And it doesn't only make you stronger, it makes you faster, it makes you more capable, it makes you more intelligent, it makes it that you've dealt with situations people just getting in the industry couldn't even fathom, and you bring all of that to the microphone all at once. And a good client can hear that and knows it. You know what I mean?
That was fantastic, man. That was great. I'm glad you shared that. It's kind of like the saying I like: bumpy roads lead to beautiful destinations. And that's sound exactly what it sounded like. And I just visualize you on the train because I'm sure, I can imagine being in that situation, something huge like that. But there has been some NDA things that I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. I'm going to make it. And it was just somebody got it. And I felt devastated, but instead of getting upset, I started saying, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for the opportunity, because I got an opportunity that somebody would love to have the opportunity for. And you took yours, you took your defeat and you made it into something huge. And now look what you're doing, man. This is awesome. This is awesome what you're doing. And
thank you, man.
This is what you're meant for. Have you read Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights book?
I haven't, no.
Oh my gosh. Read that. And he talks about we are made for every moment in our life. Even if it's bad or good, we're made for every moment. And think about that sometimes. There's some days, you think little things that break or this or that. It's meant to be in that moment so you know how to defeat it next time. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Life isn't perfect. Life will never be perfect. And if it is for you, you should play the lottery.
Right, yeah.
It's time to have some fun now. Now it's time for the audition challenge. Are you ready?
Well, yeah, I'll give it a shot, man.
I sent something in your chat, and this is something for you have that, like I said, that really cool promo voice, and I know you'll love this one. I think it'll fit you. Whenever you're ready, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, here we go. Coming this Thursday, the ice will be electrifying with sounds of the 80s hairband Rat. That's right, Rat on Ice, coming to a rink near you.
Oh my gosh, who didn't listen to Rat? I mean, I'm an 80s kid, so
Round and round, baby. Milton Berle.
Yeah,
come on, in the video.
Yeah, and I always think of the movie. What is it? Wedding Singer.
Yes.
And he's like, "Ooh, she's hot," like a hairband.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh man, those were the days.
Yeah, man.
But before we let you go, I say this every time, the cliche question: if you can go back and tell yourself something now to help build, pick yourself up, to say, hey, you know what, you're going to do this. What would you go back and tell yourself to change things? Or would you just keep it the way it was?
No, I would tell myself to be patient, and it's all going to work out. You just have to be patient and keep working. Wonderful. And that's it. Yeah.
See, that's good. And that's one thing my grandfather should tell me. You can't control things. You can't sweat the things you can't control. You know what I mean, in life. And one thing about this job that I tell people all the time is thick skin. If you can't take criticism, just don't get into it, because you can get beat down with emotion sometimes, but sometimes you can be lifted up with like excitement and overwhelming excitement. And I can't wait to see and hear your voice on ESPN, HBO, Hulu, all that stuff. You are one of the coolest. Dan Wright, thank you so much for being on Behind the Audition podcast.
Thank you so much, Curt, man. Really love it. Thanks, man.
Absolutely.
To find out more about Dan Wright or to book him for a project, visit gravelthroat.com.
Thanks for listening in on Behind the Audition podcast, made possible by Hilton Productions. If you need a male or female voiceover, contact us at hiltonproductions.com. Hilton Productions, let our voices do the selling.